there is no one single Maimonides. Depends with whom you are speaking. Today we spoke about a Kantian Maimonides. True? Maimonides didn't know that he's Kantian. But let me shortly distinguish between 7 types of Maimonides found in scholarship. The first one is the great philosopher, or what is called the rationalist. That's one of the titles of the last books of Maimonides by Herbert Davidson. As such, as a rationalist, he became, we can speak about an idol, especially in the Enlightenment, but also in Israel for a while, provided the activity of Yeshayahu Leibovich. That is the Jewish rationalist par excellence. Then there is another Maimonides, which is, in my opinion, deeply different from the rationalist Maimonides, and that's the halachic Maimonides, which for sure cannot be denied. But people emphasizing the halachic Maimonides, also they emphasize from time to time the strong rationalistic inclination of Maimonides. And that you can see in the writings of many, many scholars, but more eminent scholars in this direction. The late Isador Tversky and David Hartman, for example. Not that they deny that he was a philosopher, but a philosopher which combined halacha with philosophy, and then his philosophy is actually framed within the frame of halacha. So there is also an esoteric Maimonides, basically promoted by Leo Strauss, which brings Maimonides in a totally different framework. There's not the framework of halacha, and not exactly the philosophy, the Neo-Aristotelian philosophy, but some form of Platonic philosophy. So that's a totally different form of Maimonides, which assumes a lot of assumptions about some hidden agendas in Maimonides, which are not revealed because of his esoteric trend. To this trend, also Shlomo Pines adhered to a certain extent. Then we have the Kabbalistic Maimonides. About this I shall speak a little bit more in a moment. Kabbalists claim that he was a Kabbalist. It's very easy to claim, very difficult to prove. But that we have such a phenomenon is quite evident since the 13th century. And as we're going to see in this lecture, that is very, very important even in the Enlightenment. Shlomo Maimon. Would I know that there are so much scholars of Shlomo Maimon? I would speak only about this, but nevertheless, I shall mention at the end Maimonides as an introduction to Kabbalah. That Shlomo Maimon, a great Maimonidean by any parameters. Then we have a magical Maimonides. Epistles written by, allegedly, Maimonides, where he's functioning exactly inverse from what he's writing in his original, genuine writings. Astrology, magic, usage of divine names. Believe me, there were lectures about Maimonides, a magician. Last year, some 2 or 3 months ago, in Jerusalem, by a scholar. The great magician Maimonides, that is the title of the lecture in Mishkanot. You have seen it. So that's not my invention, not only the invention of the scholars. I would like not to elaborate about this issue. But to put it very shortly, only a great magician could convince the Jews that they are rationalistic monotheists. You must be a magician to be able to perform something like that. So, and there is the skeptical Maimonides of the late Pines, Shlomo Pines, claiming that what's important in this context is that Maimonides, to a certain extent, despaired about the possibility to know very important issues in his philosophy, following basically a fragment from a book of Al-Farabi, in which is denied the possibility of union with the agent intellect. And that is the skeptical Maimonides. I am going to speak about something different, but nevertheless, that's a category. After Pines printed the article, there was a reaction to it by the late Professor Alexander Altman. I still believe there is a strong point in this assumption that Maimonides ultimately didn't believe in a structure in which we can know the most important things we should know. So all those views are basically found in scholarship. And the question is, what happens here? So without entering in too many explanations, my basic assumption is that Maimonides, being a very great figure, producing a lot, and I'm speaking about only the original Maimonides, not what was attributed to him, changed his mind. And everyone could find in one or another phase of his something that fits his, her scholarly interest. Or to put it more bluntly, Maimonides was a useful figure. You have an institute here. So you can see how useful Maimonides can be, but it was even more useful for different camps in Judaism who appropriated his figure for their interest. But that is the point I would like to emphasize. It's not a matter of forgery or very, how to put it, violent interpretation. But the problem is that there is nothing like Maimonides, given the fact that he developed over a period of many years and wrote a lot and changed his mind, which is natural. Even more so when he contradicted himself all the time. Everyone can find his Maimonides in Maimonides. That's Maimon, for example, is a good example. That Maimonides was very useful, not only for him, but also for the Jewish community in Berlin. Here we have actually our enlightenment, that we can publish, comment, and show that the Jews were not so terrible as the Christians think. That's why Maimonides is very useful. The exercise I would like to make here is to read the text of the early Maimonides and discuss it in the context in which it was quoted once by a Kabbalist. So the text is preserved in another important Sephardi figure named Nahmanides, who was not very fond of Maimonides and criticized him in many, many cases. But here we have a case in which it's very, very laudatory. So Nahmanides, he wrote around 1260. A very important eschatological book dealing with the fate of the soul after death. At the very end of the book, he's quoting Maimonides, Motamot, that I would like to emphasize, from Arabic, but by his translation, which is better than any other translation made by the philosophers. So here we see a Kabbalist who understood Maimonides better than the philosophers, and compared him, that I cannot enter in too many details, to very important Kabbalistic issues. So, you have the text I translated from the normal edition of Nahmanides Sharagul, which is not good. It was done by philosophers who knew Arabic. And below, I have a quotation of Nahmanides, who was, unfortunately, a Kabbalist. I shall speak about small differences. So, in the world to come, our souls intelligize some secrets of the Creator, just as they intelligize in this world some secrets of the stars and spheres or more. Here is the young Maimonides, very confident, not the skeptical one, to continue the same issue post-mortem as we did it already here. Maimonides was less confident. And thus did the sages said, in the world to come there is no eating or drinking, but the righteous are sitting and their diadems are on their head and they enjoy the splendor of the Shekhinah. That's a text from Brachot, a very mythical text, reinterpreted by Maimonides in a moment in quite a philosophical way. The meaning of the locution, their diadems are on their head, is the existence of the soul by the dint of the existence of the things she knows. Meaning, there's no diadem. No one is sitting there. Everything is fabula. It's an invention. What's the meaning of what the sages are saying? That is the Aristotelian story that the intellect is subsisting by the intellectual cargo that the intellect is able to acquire. So someone acquiring more exists more, if you like. And it is being identical with that things, hi v'hu davar echad, meaning Aristotelian theory of cognition. Cognition is identification between the intellect and the object of cognition. However, the formula used here, hi v'hu davar echad, is a formula known in rather mystical context. In a moment I shall speak more about it. As those among the philosophers who understand and said on this issue, and it takes long to explain it. And what they, the sages, say, they enjoy the splendor of the Shekhinah. Their intention is that those souls delight what they intelligize from the secret of God. Maimonides, the late Maimonides, will be very careful to speak about understanding the secret of God. He was becoming skeptical with the time. But here, you can see a very confident statement. As the holy living creatures, Chayot HaKodesh, and the other groups of angels delight when they intelligize and they know something of the secret of the creation. Therefore, the good retribution, Hagmul Atov, and the aim of the intention is that man should comprehend the supernal retribution, Hagmul Ha'elyon, and will enter in that category. And the existence of the soul would be endless, like the existence of the Creator, etc. he's speaking too much about the soul for a new Aristotelian. But the young Maimonides was a little bit more positive about it. However, the problem is that this translation, made by a philosopher, a translator, missed a very important point, and that is the soul enters post-mortem in what's called the supernal pleroma. That's not found here. In Hebrew, Molo Elion. That's a translation of an Arabic term from the Quran. That was not understood by the philosopher, and they translate. There are several translations, everyone another translation. Chevra Eliona, supernal company, or something like that. The only one who understood it correctly is Nahmanides. He knew Arabic. He read the Arabic text of the commentary on the Mishnah, and that's the way he is translating. I'm reading very fast. מה יקרו דברי הרב הגדול רבי משה ז"ל? That's a very laudatory tone. They are very, very excellent, what he's saying. I believe there's no other parallel to it in early Kabbalah to speak about Maimonides. How dear are his words. במילות קצרות וארוכות שכתב בזה העולם בפרק חלק. That's his reference from where he translated. כי בעולם הבא ישכילו נפשותינו שם מסודות הבורא. What I read here was translated already earlier. It's nothing totally new, with the exception of a crucial term which was missed by the philosophers, and that is Hamalo Ha'elyon, on the next page, the first line. El Hamalo Ha'elyon, and that is for sure the best translation, paralleled by the Quran and by several Arabic philosophers, which means that the soul is joining other type of existence named Amalo Ha'elyon. Now, for Nahmanides to find the text Amalo Ha'elyon was a great excitement. Why? Because in the early Kabbalistic text, we have such a term. The term is a little bit different, not Melo, but Maleh, which means the pleroma. You can imagine Nahmanides reading Maimonides and finding the term that is found already in the book of Bahir that he revered. And for him it is actually a good reason to say how excellent are the words of Maimonides. What Nahmanides is doing, he's framing Maimonides. You know, a quotation he's bringing from the book of Bahir, which is a Kabbalistic book, and then quoting Maimonides, and then quoting again the book of Bahir. He doesn't have to say that he's a Kabbalist. It's quite evident for every reader that Maimonides, by using the term Malo Elyon, is parallel, confirming, adhering to whatever, however you put, to what is written in the book of Bahir, conceived to be by the scholars the first Kabbalistic book, which was one of the major sources of Nahmanides' Kabbalah. Now, is this a falsification? Is this a mistake? Or it is what I'm calling a framing, meaning you frame the text in the way you like. From this moment, he's telling your story. Not because you would like to falsify. He didn't want to falsify. On the contrary, he translated more carefully the text of Maimonides and the philosophers. I don't know if the philosophers were aware that it's from the Quran or from other philosophers. I'm going to, in a moment to quote. I don't know if the reader is aware, but in any case, you read in a major Kabbalistic figure an accurate translation where you can find the text which may be influenced, text, maybe the Arabic text, that may be influenced the book of Bahir. And the correspondence between Kabbalah and Maimonides is quite evident. Now, Maimonides is not very innovative on this issue. A parallel is quoted here immediately. And there are many other parallels among Arabic philosophers. Al-Razali, I brought Al-Razali for, in a moment we'll see why, but that's also in Sina. It's a normal view in Arabic philosophy, but in a moment I shall qualify it. So you can see in Al-Razali, and at the moment of death, when he would detach himself from the body and the obstacle was removed, then the delight will be complete. You see, almost word by Maimonides. And the way will be revealed. That is not so regular Maimonides. You have only in Shlomo revealed. And the happiness will last forever. And he will adhere to the supernal pleroma, which is an angelic structure. And will become a companion to the angels insofar as the nearest to the true one, a nearness that is not of place but of rank. Meaning, to be very close of God, very nice for Al-Razali, who was a mystic. Now, Al-Razali and also Ibn Sina are described from time to time, not just as mystics, but some form of mystical philosophy. Not my term, scholars using it. From this point of view, Maimonides is a mystical philosopher. If you are going to read the ways in which scholars like George Vaida, to a certain extent also Joseph Sermonetta, and more recently Menachem Lovelboim, you'll see there is something like a certain type of mysticism which is philosophical. And this is the type of mysticism. They don't include this text, but following them in studies of David Blumenthal, you can find the assumption that Maimonides was actually a mystic. Not once, not twice. Why? Because he has this form of detachment of the soul, attachment to a form of transformation. It's considered by scholars to be actually a certain form of mysticism. So, from this point of view, Maimonides is a mystic. Speaking about this experience, post-mortem experience, in a very strong way of being actually, by invading the divine sphere and being close to God. It's a certain form of mysticism, and I don't want to enter here definitions of what mysticism is, but other scholars decided that that is a sign of mysticism. Another example that I didn't quote here, I'm going only to tell you very shortly, even more radical. So when a Kabbalist is saying Maimonides is a Kabbalist, he could bring, if you like, receipts. You see, that's this term is found in the book of Bahir, and that's a very important term. Maimonides is using it, and that's obvious. A scholar could say, yeah, for sure, he was a mystic in the way other Arab mystics were, and there's no reason to deny from this text, and also from some other texts, the mystical dimension. Now let me move to a more recent example of Maimon. So Maimon, the great rationalist, the great skeptic, whatever you like, who called himself Maimon, using Maimonides' name. How did the young Maimon consider Maimonides? First quotation in the text found still in manuscript. Whoever has not studied the books of the divine philosophers, especially the guide of Maimonides, in order to comprehend the issue of rejection of all attributes, changes, and patience from God, has no way to enter the chambers of Kabbalah whatsoever. His gate should be closed and not open. So what is Maimonides for him? The young. Before he became Maimon. He's an introduction to Kabbalah. He is a totally necessary introduction to Kabbalah. No one would understand Kabbalah without Maimonides. This view is not so unique. You can find it among much greater Kabbalists, like Rabbi Cook, for example, who said exactly the same, without reading Maimon. He said, actually, it's impossible to enter Kabbalah without studying first Maimonides, because that purifies your understanding of the terminology found in Kabbalah. So without Maimonides, no Kabbalah. It's very interesting to point to the fact that Maimonides emerged a little bit earlier than Kabbalah. And for Rabbi Cook, that was a sign. Actually, Maimonides was, the mission of Maimonides was to open the gate to the Kabbalah by allowing much more sophisticated and spiritual understanding that otherwise the Kabbalah would not be understood. So that's not so unique in Cheshek Shlomo. It's found also elsewhere. And again, another text, again in Cheshek Shlomo, the second category is the category of the Kabbalists. You know, Shlomo Maimon liked very much to make categories. They felt that there are wondrous secrets in the Torah, and also the sayings of the rabbis are very sealed and obscure. Their soul desire to know the secrets, and so they hold to the science of Kabbalah, and so that thereby they reach their final intention. I mean, the Kabbalists believe that they understand Kabbalah. And they are content with the knowledge of those matters without any conceptualization of those things whatsoever. And they thought that they know all the secrets of reality and the order of creation of the world and the order of its governing. All this according to strange fantasies. Some of them are eliciting love, others the inverse, as it is appropriate to cry and complain on the fact that such things have been attributed to the nature of God, blessed be He. You can see what he's saying here is following actually what he wrote earlier. Many Kabbalah understood without conceptualization, in Hebrew is tziyur, is a thing to laugh. Only someone who studies Maimonides, conceptualizing, is capable to enter Kabbalah. So that is a view which remained still in manuscripts, but it is not so exceptional in Kabbalistic camps, which sees in Maimonides actually a corridor to enter Kabbalah, a necessary corridor, not just a corridor. So this form of conceptualization is found. And let me bring one more example, and then speak a little bit more about skeptical Maimonides. one of the Kabbalists who was a real Maimonidean, the hero of my writings, Abraham Abulafia, wrote several commentaries on the guides, maybe 3, maybe more. That's not done by any philosopher. Up to today, no one wrote more than 1. Casper wrote 2. But that's all. Short. He wrote 3. Abulafia studied for 10 years before becoming a Kabbalist Maimonides and his sources available in Hebrew. Aristotelian, Al-Farabi, Averroes. So he was a good Maimonidean before he became Kabbalist. In 1260 to 1270, he was a pure Maimonidean. According to his own testimony, he was laughing as a Kabbalist. And then at a certain moment, something happened, less important. He started actually to interpret Maimonides more Kabbalistical, meaning according to a variety of techniques of interpretation, very radical, more radical than whatever you can find in Europe up to Derrida, including Derrida, claiming that Maimonides, that's the way to understand Maimonides, that Maimonides himself thought that that's the way to be understood. So that prima facie is craziness. To interpret Maimonides according to combinations of letters, as he did, that's something insane. He did it while claiming to be a Maimonidean. Meaning when he became a Kabbalist, he didn't desert the camp of the Maimonides. Not at all. He still taught Maimonides to his students, up to his death. His claim was that he received some secrets orally, apparently coming from the mouths of Maimonides. And he's writing commentaries on the secrets. Those 3 commentaries didn't attract the attention of scholars of Maimonides or philosophy. Here you have the single exception is sitting here, Professor Zev Harvey. He's the only one who quoted a text from one of those commentaries. I can understand them. You open one page, you see what's going on there, very difficult to continue later. So Abulafia claims that his matter of interpretation, in a moment I shall speak about the result of interpretation. The matter of interpretation is found in Maimonides. He is bringing several times quotations from Maimonides. You believe the quotations are there or not? You think they are not there. Maimonides didn't indulge in this type of commentary. But the fact is that they are there. But scholars don't see them. They are found in the text of Maimonides. I shall give just one example. In the Guide of the Perplexed 243, Maimonides is taking a word in Hebrew, hovlin, changing the order, bochalin, and saying that's the way we should understand the secrets of the Merkabah. Not just one example, but that is a certain form of principle to understand no less than the most important metaphysical issue. The secret of the Merkabah. I really don't understand what's going on in Maimonides. It's not a fake. That is found there in all the editions. However, for Abulafia, that was a proof text for an approach which liberates the reader from the more allegorical type of interpretation used by Maimonides, and could allow to a Kabbalist to apply the same method in other places. For sure, this interpretation done by Abulafia is mistaken. The moment I should qualify it, is mistaken. However, the principle is found in Maimonides. And with the exception of a speech Professor Harvey gave once, I didn't hear anyone who asked the question what's going on here. How Maimonides can say that by changing the order of letters, someone can extract secrets of the Merkabah. So, for sure, Abulafia took a detail and exploited it to the maximum. The question is this exploitation misinterpreting Maimonides? That is the real question. To say that he used those techniques which are where the Maimonides wouldn't accept, with the exception of what I mentioned here, it's very easy. Much more difficult is to say to what extent Abulafia's commentaries are divulging a dimension of Maimonides' hidden thought. You understand me? The technique is an exaggeration taken from Hasidei Ashkenaz that Maimonides won't even read their books, no doubt. However, the problem is a different problem, a philosophical problem. He makes a series of claims, Abulafia. Are those claims a misunderstanding of Maimonides, or are they an understanding of Maimonides? So, my claim is that in many cases, Abulafia reveals secrets of the guide, secrets that Maimonides has decided to hide. How he arrived to it by what he claims that he received a tradition of the secrets or the technique, that's another story. I don't believe he received the tradition, oral tradition from Maimonides, despite the fact he claims so. For sure, the technique of interpretation is not Maimonidean. But those are accidental stories. The story is, for example, if he interpreted Maimonides correctly, he is the first interpreter of Maimonides in writing a commentary, with the exception of Shmuel Tibon, the notes of Shmuel Tibon. And he makes claims by using Maimonides' texts and quoting different chapters and comparing them. He has done some form of work. And now I'm coming to the last 5 minutes, to the skeptical Maimonides. So what can you imagine Abulafia revealed? A Kabbalist. What can he reveal? Some form of, how to put it, traditional form of Judaism, conservative form of Judaism, national form of Judaism, like all the other Kabbalists. So you can say, if this is the fact, you know, that is total misinterpretation of Maimonides. So my claim is that's not the case. If we analyze the content of the commentaries, and not only of the commentaries, also in other writings of his, Abulafia is not a Maimonidean. He's a radical Maimonidean. Even things that Maimonides didn't write. And in my opinion, none of his other commentators or followers dare to say are conceived by Abulafia self-evident. I should give some examples in order to understand that's not an easy story. For example, what do you think about the paradise? Is the traditional paradise, according to Abulafia, a real mythical place where? No, he is taking from Maimonides the sharply allegorical interpretation of paradise. It's a mode of cognition. And we're ready to say, actually, the paradise is now here. The world to come is not coming post-mortem, like in traditional Judaism. But it is the moment of contemplation or adherence, or it doesn't matter how you are looking at it, that we achieve now here. I don't believe that Maimonides, I don't know exactly what he thought, but I'm sure he wouldn't protest too much. He wouldn't say, look, that is crazy. That is against the rabbinic vision of the paradise. How do you can say something like that? The paradise is found now. This night I enter the paradise and I return. An example. That's a mild example. Reading those commentaries, you can find a vision of a language as a natural language, including Hebrew. I'm on this a little bit here, dealing with conventional stories. I would like not to enter too much. But for Abulafia, Hebrew language is the language, the ultimate language, but not the language we speak, but the principles of language. Something like Chomsky. Meaning there are consonants, there are vowels, there are combinations of letters. That is Hebrew. Hebrew is not the actual language we speak now, but it is the best language because it deals with the natural aspects of language. Questions like, what's the nature of the Torah? The Jewish people, are they the unique, how to put it, choice of God? Or that's a mythology? If you're going to read more recently studies on Maimonides, especially by Professor Menachem Kellner, you will see Maimonides was a great universalist. Yes, but what's it mean to be universalist if you believe the Jewish people is chosen, and the language is chosen, and everything is chosen? There's not too much universalist here. Abulafia, the Kabbalist, dealing with all the combinations of letters, believes that actually Hebrew is not the language we speak. It is something coming before the language. In my opinion, Chomsky is the best parallel. The nation of Israel, yes, if they qualify. For example, he's speaking a lot about, not about the multitude of the Jews. That is nothing, it's obvious. He's speaking about the multitudes of the rabbis. An expression very, very rare to speak. The rabbis, not you sleep. The multitudes of the rabbis, it's a very sharp statement, not a unique statement. Maimonides would be very glad, in my opinion. Would he be asked, who are those Ashkenazi rabbis? He would say, oh, there's a multitude of the rabbis. They don't count at all. And even more so, what is the nature of the Torah? So for Abulafia, that is the nature of religion. What is the nature of religion? I don't know. But this vision of the Torah as a natural is universalistic, not very Kabbalistic. Which means skeptical elements in Maimonides about the uniqueness, spatial status, were radicalized maybe by Abulafia, maybe not, and divulged in very blatant language. Because he believed at the time of the Messiah, there's no reason now to play games, like Maimonides did. For him, Maimonides played games, and he has hidden the real message of his thought. And Abulafia thought that the more, how to put it, skeptical approach to the most cherished values in Judaism. The most cherished values should be critical, and he is very critical of the rabbis, not only Ashkenazi rabbis. And if that skeptical Maimonides is revealed by Abulafia, your institute can easily deal with skepticism. So, in my opinion, a Kabbalist was more skeptical than the philosophers. I read some commentaries on Maimonides. All of them are relatively traditional. Caspi a little bit here, there, saying something, afraid not to be caught by the authorities. And a Kabbalist could be more faithful to Maimonides by being skeptical about the most important values, without, in my opinion, betraying the sources he interpreted. So here, it's exactly 45 minutes.